quasi-linear preferences. And we also saw the case of complementary goods. So that is something where we need to understand how the questions are being framed. Okay, is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and please, all of you, look at the papers that I have added in the drive. That will help you in understanding, like when we are studying consumer theory, what are the topics or what are the points that we need to give some emphasis on. Okay. So have you looked at any one of you who have looked at CUET question paper? Anyone who have looked at the CUET question paper?
Yes, sir.
You have looked at the CUET question paper?
Yes, sir. 2020.
Not 2020, 2022. I think I have not added in drive, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So I'll add, I think 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22. I'll add all the 5 years question paper. Okay. And
Yes, sir.
most probably I'll add today so you can have a look at the question paper.
Okay, sir.
So let me first share the question paper. Wait, hold on. Is this visible?
Yes, sir.
Is this visible now?
Yes, sir.
So now see, here we get a question on angel curve for a given good is. Okay. Yes or no? So yesterday we discussed about the different type of curves that we are going to study. Income of a curve, or you can say a price curve and all. So this is something like they have, and we also discussed like there are three different type of goods: given goods, normal goods, and inferior goods. So this is something, this question is based on the application, like angel curve for a given good is. So it's very important that we understand what are the given goods and what are the properties of given goods. Okay. Then again, these are some of the questions which is, I mean, again, question number 33. This is again related to your microeconomics, but then not from consumer theory. Okay, so I'm just looking at questions which are, and see, I'll add all these papers. And one thing that we are also doing is that we will segregate all the microeconomics question paper, okay, so that it's very easy for you to go through the question paper. Okay, like when we are studying microeconomics, what are the topics that we need to look at?
So you have added the UGC NET question papers. Like, is it helpful for us in the with the perspective of this entrance exam?
Yes.
Okay, sir. We have to solve those questions as well.
Yes, but once the syllabus is over, then only you start solving them.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Just hold on for a second. So one thing that we saw, yes, there is a question regarding angel curve. What is angel curve? Anyone?
Relationship between income and good demand.
Income and consumption.
Demand.
Like when there is a change in income, what happens to the, whether we are consuming more? So angel curves is a combination of all the points of, which all points? Anyone?
Optimal choice.
Equilibrium points. Okay. So this screen is visible now. So in yesterday's class, we discussed about indifference curve, right? Indifference curve. So we said that indifference curve is nothing but this indifference curve represent a particular utility function. What information can be drawn? Let's say we are consuming two different goods. Good is Y and good X. Okay. So this indifference curve talks about what? Utility function or the utility preference. This talks about the utility preference. Now, how do we know that this talks about the utility preference? Or how do we know what kind of goods we are consuming? Kind of goods. Kind of goods. For example, in yesterday's class, we discussed that one is our, let's say, substitutes. So for substitutes, what will be the shape of indifference curve?
Straight line.
S- Straight line. Clear? For complements, what will be the shape of
L-shape.
L-shape.
L-shaped? And this kind of shape of indifference curve, this talks about substitute, complements, or quasi-linear preferences. So what is the essential feature of quasi-linear preferences as compared to these perfect substitutes? Anyone? See, in real world, what happens is that we don't want to consume two extremes. Okay, we want to consume a combination of both goods X and Y, right? So quasi-linear preferences is again a special kind of indifference curve, where we say that consumer, or we say that consumes both the goods. Yes, because we say that we might consume at point this, might consume at point this, one might consume at point this. Okay, so basically wherever we are consuming at the indifference curve, we are consuming both the goods, right? Yes or no? So one thing that you will see is that if we draw a straight line, let's say this is also a indifference curve and this is also indifference curve. What you will find is that quasi-linear preferences, in the quasi-linear preferences, the indifference curve do not touch the axis. Do not touch the axis. And when it is not touching the axis, this means that goods are not perfect substitutes. Not perfect substitutes. In this case, we are saying that yes, we can consume it either this point or we might consume it either this point, right? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So these are some of the ways in which the questions might be asked. Now, one thing that again we discussed when we were discussing about the indifference curve is that, these both, like when we are talking about the combination of good X and good Y. So on the indifference curve, X and Y both are normal goods. X and Y. This is case one where both are normal goods. X and Y, only one is inferior good. And again case three, only one is given good. Okay, so both cannot be a given good. We cannot draw indifference curve where both X and Y can be a given good, or we cannot draw a case where both Y and X are inferior goods. Is it clear? So this is something that we need to keep in mind, and this is something, where usually what happens is that they'll give you 4 different sentences and they'll ask which one of the following is incorrect. Now, can you tell me, can both X and Y can be a complementary goods?
No, sir.
Why?
So yes,
In the case of
mostly.
L-shaped, in the case of L-shaped, both X and Y are in complementary goods.
Yes, sir. In the L-shaped course, yes, sir.
So again, one option that I can add is both X and Y are complementary goods. Okay. So if you look into these kind of things, these are very simple ways in which the questions can be asked. But what happens is that we need to keep, understand, like whenever we are studying all of these things, where the questions can be raised. Is it clear?
Yes.
Okay. Now let's talk about the utility function. When we are talking about the preferences, so what will be the equation of utility function?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, can you give some real examples, real life examples of quasi-linear preferences?
Quasi-linear like apple and milk, or ice cream and samosa.
Sir,
So
quasi-linear
ice cream and samosa. Okay. Now, if you want to take an example of perfect substitute, if you want to take the example of a substitute, so you can say, samosa of Bikaner and samosa of Agrawal. Does it make any difference whether you eat samosa of Bikaner or samosa of Agrawal? If we keep tastes and preference as same, does it make any difference?
No, sir.
Or for example, let's say we want to talk about the broom. Like there are 2 different companies of broom, so you want to, or rather than broom, let's say we want to talk about Swiggy, Zomato. Does it make any difference whether you order from Swiggy or Zomato till the point that you get the same samosa? Does it make any difference?
No, sir.
So in this case, what happens is that if we talk about the utility function, then in the case of substitutes, you will find, let's say, utility of x comma y will be ax plus by. So you'll find this sign plus. Is it clear? Now, in the case of complements, again, x comma y, let's say we are saying 2 goods. So in this case, we will have either minimum of ax comma by. So here ax, so a and b, these are you can say these are constants. So a and b represents a comma b, they represent the ratio or proportion in which the two goods will be consumed. Is it clear? So A and B represents the proportion. That's why we call it a minimum. For example, let's say we want to make tea. So to make 1 cup of tea, we need, let's say, sugar and milk. Okay. 1 cup of tea, we need sugar and milk. And in which proportion? Minimum, let's say 1 teaspoon of sugar and 2 cup of milk. So our utility function of S comma M will be minimum 1S comma 2M. This is, so 1:2 is the ratio. So 1 spoon of sugar and 2 cup of milk. So this is how the utility function is written for complements. Okay. Now in the case of quasi-linear preferences, we'll find utility function x comma y in the form of, let's say, where they are in the form of, they are in the, rather than, it can be, let's say, ax by, where they are multiplied by each other, or ax upon by, whatever. This can be the functional form. So these are the functional forms. So sometimes in the entrance examination, what they might do is that they will give you 4 different utility function, and they'll ask you which functional form is the utility function. Okay. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
So this is something that we need to focus on. Anyone having any question?
So will you please brief these utility functions once again? Like, I'm not totally clear with it.
Like what you're not clear with?
So like we have in the case of substitutes, we have taken ax plus by. Why did we take the proportions here, like a and b?
So A and B is something, it's a constant that gives you like what quantities of goods are required for the satisfaction, for the consumption.
Sir, and why are we adding here?
Because they are perfect substitute. It doesn't matter whether you want to consume good X or good Y.
Okay, sir.
See, what happens is that, let's say we want to see there are 2 pen, one is, cello, black pen, and Reynolds, again black pen. So what kind of good is this? Whether it is a perfect substitute or complements or a quasi-linear good?
Perfect substitute.
Perfect.
It doesn't matter whether you use black pen produced by cello or Reynolds, right? Yes or no? So what we say is that, let's say, let's call this cello X and Reynolds is Y. So utility is X comma Y such that, let's say, this is AX plus BY. Okay. This means you need to use, to reach to a particular utility, what you need to do is, either X or Y, because you want to maximize your utility by consumption of the total good. Okay. Now let's say X, let's say A is equal to 2 and B is equal to 3. So our utility function Ux comma Y is 2x plus 3y. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now you are saying that x and y are perfect substitutes. In this means that you can consume either x or y. Yes or no? So this means that to reach to a particular utility, your x comma y should be either 5x or 5y you'll get the same utility. Is it clear? That's why we use the sign plus.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
So we'll be solving numericals on the basis of these utility functions later on.
Yes.
Okay, sir. I think it will be much better clear after that.
Now, see, once we understand this, then the next point that we need to discuss is marginal utility. We discussed a marginal utility a bit in the previous lecture. We will discuss all of these things. And then again, once we go through the budget line and the equilibrium, then we'll see like what kind of questions are being asked when the prices changes, when let's say there is an increase in or change in utility and everything on. Okay. So one thing additional that we need to understand from this slope is, this slope also talks about your MRS or diminishing marginal return. One thing is clear that since we are moving from one point to this point, what happens is that, once we increase, let's say consumption, this is X1 and this is X2. So we are increasing the consumption of good X, right? And in the previous lecture, what did we see? When we keep on increasing the consumption of same good, our marginal return is increasing or decreasing?
Decreasing.
So this keeps on decreasing. Now again, in the previous lecture, we discussed about the marginal rate of substitution. Like, let's say this is point A, this is point B. We are moving from point A to point B, right? So here we were consuming, this was Y1 and this is Y2. So there is a fall from Y1 to Y2 and there's a increase from X1 to X2, right? So marginal rate of substitution is nothing but how much unit of good X needs to be increased to compensate the decrease in good Y. Okay. So let's try to understand this with the help of marginal utility. Marginal utility. What is marginal utility? Marginal utility is nothing but change in total utility. Change in total utility due to change in quantity of goods consumed, holding other quantity as constant, other goods as constant. Other good as constant. So let's try to understand this with the help of again indifference curve. So we are consuming two different goods. This is good Y and this is good X. Okay. Let's take the example of perfect substitute. And let's say earlier we were consuming at point A and this is now point B. Okay. So this is your Y1 and this is your X1. This is 0. And this is Y2 and this is X2. So consumption at point B will be, or you can say UB is equal to how much? X2 comma Y2. This is what we are consuming at point B of the two goods. And what is the utility at UA? At UA, what are the consumption points? X comma Y1. Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Now, can you tell me whether UA will be equal to UB or UA will be higher than UB? Higher or same?
Same. Same.
Or higher?
Same.
Sakshi?
Same.
Sakshi, whether it will be higher or same?
Sir, it will
Yasika,
be higher.
why?
Uh, can you repeat the question again? I was
I have written
noting
UA
actually.
is equal to UB. See, don't write anything because I'll be sharing the lectures, I'll be sharing the PDF of all of these things. So right now, just focus on the class. No need to copy it down, okay?
Okay, sir.
I'll be sharing everything. So my question is, I have written two different points, point A and point B. I have written two different consumption points at UA and UB.
Mm.
Now I have written that utility at point A is equal to utility at point B. It is correct or it is incorrect?
Yes, sir.
Incorrect or correct?
It is correct, sir.
Why?
Because sir, x1 y1 is equal to I think x2.
What is the reason? See, in the entrance examination, there is a new type of questions which is known as assertion and reason. In assertion and reason, what happens is that you will be given a statement like assertion is, you know, uh, utility, or you can say assertion is UA is equal to UB, and reason is both lie on the same indifference curve. So now tell me whether both are correct, both are not correct, whether reason is the correct explanation of assertion, or both are correct but reason is not the correct explanation of assertion. Sakshi,
Sir, the assertion is correct, but the reason is not correct.
why?
Because uh, no, if the utilities are same, that means that both will be on the same indifference curve. So I
That's
think
what is written over here.
yes, sir. So I think the both will be correct.
And is the reason correct explanation of the assertion?
Yes, sir. Kind of.
Yes, it is correct. So see, this is also a way in which the questions are being asked in the entrance examination. Okay. Assertion region, where assertion is a claim and region is a explanation. Now, sometimes region can be correct. It might not be the correct explanation for the assertion. So you will have to check that also. So both assertion and region is correct. So we are claiming that utility at this point is, because see, we have discussed that indifference curve is nothing but a combination of all the points. Indifference curve, this is nothing but combination of all consumption points where utility remains constant. Correct?
Sir, have
Yeah,
one question here. So, like, in the reason of the question, it has both lie on the same budget line. Then, can we say the reason is correct to the assertion?
no.
No, no, sir. Okay, sir.
Till now we have not discussed budget line, and budget line is different from indifference curve. Budget line has nothing to do with utility.
Okay, sir.
Budget line has something to do with the prices and all. Budget line is your constraint, the your how much you can afford. Utility is an indifference curve is regarding your satisfaction. Budget line is regarding your affordability. So these are two different things. So So this is clear, like indifference curve is a combination of all the consumption point. Now this is also a combination of consumption point. This is also a consumption point, combination of consumption points, of the two goods X and Y. Okay. So now the question is, like if our consumption point is changing from point A to point B, I have written the change in total utility due to change in quantity of good consumed holding other good at constant. This means this is changing. So this is delta X. Yes or no? So when delta X is increasing, what is the impact on utility? Correct? Now, tell me, when your X is increasing, the change in utility will be negative or positive? When you are increasing your
Positive.
X, so this will be positive. So this is the marginal utility for good X. Now, similarly, marginal utility of good Y. Now, we are coming from this point to this point. So tell me whether you are increasing the consumption of good Y or decreasing the consumption of good Y.
Decreasing.
Decreasing the consumption.
This means your utility, total utility, the change in utility will be negative or positive when you keep good X as constant.
Negative.
So delta
Negative.
will be negative. Right? So what we are saying is that, due to delta X, we are saying positive delta U or positive change in total utility, and due to change in Y, we are looking at negative change in total utility, right? So if we add up these two utility, whether it will be zero, positive or negative.
Negative.
Why?
Zero, sir. You will be on the same page.
According to mathematics, positive and negative is equal to negative.
I have written positive and negative. Where negative, negative?
Sir, I'm saying positive and negative equal to negative as according to mathematics. That's
We
why.
are we are adding up here or multiplying here?
Sir, in MRS we actually constant take x like, so for MRS we divide now the utility of x upon the utility of x y, and that's what totally I'm saying that MRS answer will be negative.
MRS, the sign of MRS is negative. Right now I'm asking
Yes,
for the
sir.
change in utility.
Oh,
The change in utility will be negative, positive or zero.
Zero, sir.
See, now what is happening is that we are saying that from here to here, there is our utility at this point is equal to utility at this point. This means this change must be equal to this change.
yes, sir.
That's why, whatever for increase or whatever decrease in utility which is taking place due to decrease in Y must be compensated by increase
Same.
in utility due to
Utility.
good X. Then only we can say that our utility, total utility is constant. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let's look at the term, like what are the two terms or what is a mathematical way of explaining or expressing this change in utility, or coming to the point of total utility and marginal utility. Okay. So this is your X. Now delta X is equal to X2 minus X1. Yes or no? This is your delta X. This is nothing but X2 is this much and X1 is this much. So I am writing delta X is equal to X2 minus X1. Similarly, delta Y will be what do we do? Final points minus initial points. So y2 is this much and y1 is this much. So y1 is larger or y2 is larger?
Y1 is large.
So
Y1.
if we write y2 minus y1 and y1 is larger, that's why our delta y is negative. Is it clear? And in this
Yes,
case,
sir.
x2 is larger, that's why our delta x is positive. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'm not drawing this figure. Hope you remember this figure so that, okay, let me draw this figure so that it's easy to understand. Good X and good Y. Okay. So this is Y1, X1, and this is Y2, X2, and this is 0. This is point A. This is point B. So marginal utility of good X is nothing. So now one thing which is very important to understand is that, whenever we are talking about marginal utility, we need to, marginal utility is about a very small change. Whenever we are writing about delta X, this is the minimal change that can be made in the consumption. Okay. That's why we call it marginal, means very small. Okay. And here we need to understand the mathematics, and we use the limit theory. Okay. So limit delta x tends towards 0. Tending towards 0 means very small, the smallest change. See, these all things are not important as per the entrance examination, but then I'm just discussing so that it's easy to understand. And if a question is asked, then you don't, panic. So we are saying that delta U is change in utility and delta X is change in good X. Change in good X, and this is change in utility. Is equal to, again, limit delta X tends to 0. Now, what is delta U? This is your U X1, Y1, and this is U X2, Y2. Now we are saying that when we are discussing about marginal utility of good X, we'll see only change, happening in total utility due to change happening in good X, and we'll keep Y as constant. So what we will do is that X plus, or in this you can say, X2, Y1 minus U X1, Y1. So this was the initial utility, and this is the new, this point. Yes or no? But then what we are doing is that we are keeping Y1 as constant. So you can think of somewhere, this point. So that we are changing this one, but we are keeping Y as constant. Is it clear? And divided by delta X. Why delta X? Because this is the change. Now X2 is nothing but X1 plus delta X. If this part is your delta X. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So from here, what we can directly say is that, MUX is nothing, or, let me write these 2 points. Now we can ignore this limit. So MUX is nothing but delta U by delta X. Okay. So this implies that is the change in utility due to change in x is nothing but MUX into or into delta x. Okay. Now similarly, so this is for good x, right? And if we want to talk about good y, so we will have delta u is equal to MUY into delta y. Same for good y also. Yes or no?
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Now we know that this, let's call it x and y, so that we know that yes, this is due to change in x and this is due to change in y. We know that delta u x must be equal to delta u y. Why? To keep total utility constant. To keep total utility as constant. Yes or no? So this means we can, equate the RHS also, or MUX into delta x must be equal to MUY into delta y. Yes or no?
Yes,
Is it
sir.
clear? This is the case. Or from here, we can say MUX upon MUY is equal to delta y upon delta x. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
This is nothing but marginal utility of x divided by marginal utility of y is nothing but delta y upon delta x. That is change in y upon change in x. Now, one thing that we will see is that, over here, when we are writing delta uy, whether this will be negative or positive. This part will be negative or positive. This delta y is negative or positive.
Negative.
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 Negative. So we'll write the negative sign. So we'll get minus sign, right? And this delta, this MUX upon MUI is known as marginal rate of
Substitute.
Substitution.
substitution. See, now the importance of this marginal rate of substitution is that this is the smallest change. This gives us an idea like what is the smallest change that we can make in, good X. Or you can also think of, the compensation. Like if you want to increase good X, by how much amount you should decrease good Y. Okay. So this is nothing but the ratio of marginal rate of substitution is nothing but the ratio of marginal utility of the two different goods. Okay. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Hmm. Okay. Now, next thing again, let's introduce. And again, we can also interpret the term that is the concept of equimarginal principle. But yes, before we use the concept of equimarginal principle, so this is all about indifference curve. Is it clear? So now let's talk about the budget constant. So we are having two goods, X and good Y. Now X must be having some amount, the X must be having some price. So let's call it PX. This is price of one unit of good X. Similarly, PY is price of 1 unit of good Y. See, why we introduce the concept of price? Because when we are consuming good X and when we are consuming good Y, how much good X and how much of good Y we can consume depends upon the prices and the total income. So we have a budget line. So budget line is written as Px into X plus Py into Y is equal to M. That is price into good X and price of good Y into Y. This is the total unit of good X consumed. X unit consumed. Okay. And Y, Py is, in this case, Y is Y unit consumed. So let's say that you want to, buy a copy and a pen. So let's say price of X is your pen and price of pen is, let's say, rupees 10. Okay. Similarly, let's say Y is your notebook and the price of notebook is rupees, let's say, 100. This is nothing but your income. So this income determines how many of good X and good Y can be consumed. A good X and Y can be consumed. Okay. So let's say that you want to purchase and let's say then M is equal to 500. If you want to purchase only pen, how many pen can you purchase? So, after now we have Px and Py, we can write 10 into X plus 100, Y is equal to 500. If you want to purchase only pen, how many pen can you purchase?
50.
50.
In this case, what we'll do is that Y is equal to 0.
0.
So 10 into X is equal to 500. So this gives us X is equal to 50. Right? And suppose if you want to purchase your X is equal to 0, this implies that Y must be equal to how much?
5.
5. Now remember this. This is very interesting. So this is your good X and this is your good Y. So this is 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 4, 5. So our budget line is Px into X plus Py into Y is equal to M. And with taking all the values, we can write 10X plus 100Y is equal to 500. So when Y is equal to 0, X was equal to how much?
50.
50.
5.
And how
50.
did you arrive at this 50? What we did was M upon Px. Yes or no?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
So this M upon Px, that is 50, this gives us the maximum value of X that can be purchased. So we get a point, this point, right? So this is nothing but M upon Px. Clear? Similarly, when X is equal to 0, Y is equal to how much? 5. And this is again, how did we arrive this? M upon Py. Everyone clear with this concept of M upon Py?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this means again we are getting this maximum of good Y that can be purchased using this budget, that is income and the price. So this point is nothing but M upon Py. So budget line is nothing but a combination of, these 2 points. So this gives us a budget line. Now, can you tell me what is the slope of this budget line?
Q1 by P2.
How did
So
we
minus px by py.
how did we get minus? Why minus px upon py?
So it slopes from left to right, downward sloping.
This is a simpler way of answering. Okay, we know that slope is minus px upon py. I'm saying what is the mathematical method to find this slope? I've written theta over here, right?
Yes, sir.
Then
By differentiating partial differentiation.
how many of you studied mathematical economics at the undergrad level?
Sense in Y by sense in X.
What is tan theta?
P by V.
Hmm?
P by V. Vertical line divided by horizontal line.
H by
P by V.
so tan theta is h upon height upon base. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Everyone, do you know what is this tan theta height upon base?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, what is the height in this case?
5.
Hmm? This is the height. This is nothing but m upon py. This is the base. This is m upon px. Yes or no? Don't go by these values. And right now we are trying to drive an standard form. Okay. So if we write h upon b, so we have up m upon py by m upon p
Px.
x. So this gives us m by py into px upon m. So this gets cancelled. So this gives us slope. This is nothing but px upon py, and this is negative. So slope is, what is the slope of this budget line? Minus px upon py. Everyone clear?
Yes, sir.
How do we, why this is px upon py? Everyone knows, see, we know it is px upon py. Why px upon py? Okay, this is clear.
Yes, sir.
Pankaj,
Yes, sir. Clear.
clear. Harshita,
Yes, sir.
Neha,
Clear.
Yes, sir.
Monica.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, what happens when px increases? What happens when the price of good x increases?
will consume less of X.
But then we are just talking about the budget line, right? So M upon PX, this will fall or this will increase?
False.
See,
Fall.
base is increasing. This means overall ratio, this will fall. This means that this line will shift somewhere towards this side, towards the origin. Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
So this will be a case where your budget line becomes steeper. Steeper. Okay. And when your PX is decreasing, budget line becomes
Flatter.
See, the implication will become clear later on when we introduce the concept of equilibrium. Okay. Right now, what we are doing is that we are making a change in Px and Py, whereas we are holding Py as constant. Now, similarly, if your Py is, let's say, increasing, what happens to your M upon Py? It will increase, it will decrease.
Decrease.
It will decrease. So what happens to the slope of budget line when your Px is constant? Slope increases or decreases?
Increases.
How increases? Just if this is coming this side, let's say it came at,
Decrease.
so this becomes, so this slope decreases, right? Slope decreases. So our budget line becomes flatter. Clear? Similarly, when our Py is decreasing, this means budget line becomes steeper. See, this is something that you can, when after the class, when you are trying to, go through this recording lectures and you go through the notes, try to do all these things in your notes also, okay, so that this will be very much clear. Because these are the kind of things which will help you in understanding this price consumption curve or income consumption curve, angel curve, offer curve, everything. This is clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now tell me what happens when Px and Py increases by same proportion. What happens to the budget line?
Budget line will shift toward origin.
So budget line will shift outward. Okay. So we discussed two things. One, shift of
Sir,
budget line. Yes.
sir, if price are increasing, then why budget line shift outward?
Tell me, will it shift or will it remain the same?
Sir, it will shift, but why it shift to the outward?
It
If
will.
price are increasing.
That's what I want to ask. Whether it will shift, it will remain the same, or when there is a shift in budget line. Shift in
It
budget
will
line,
shift, but inward.
change in prices or change in income?
Change in income.
So why you said shift outward?
Okay, sir, I got confused.
Shift in budget line will take place only when your income is changing. Okay, because see, when your Px and Py is changing in the same proportion, this change in Px and change in Py, what will happen? This talks about your
Consumption.
and come on. Will this shift in budget line not take place when your Px and Py is changing in the same proportion? Or even when both Px and Py are changing, then too your budget line will change. See, let me tell you how. This is X and this is Y. let's say this is m upon px and this is point is m upon py. Okay. Now let's say px increases. So this means that this will shift. We are claiming that px increases. This will move this side. Let's call it px. This is not px1. So we have a new point. Let's call it m upon px1. This is clear.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now let's say that py is also increasing. This means m upon py. This will also fall downward. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
This will also come down. So let's call it at this point. So this will be your new budget line.
Yes, sir.
So now the slope will depend upon the ratio in which the change of py and px is happening. Okay. So let's say if delta py is more than delta px. In this case, slope will be higher, or slope will increase, or slope will decrease. See, when p delta py is higher, this means this is greater than this much. This is delta px. This is delta py. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
See, assume this. This is the line, and now we have this line. So assume this line. Now we have this line. So this change is more than this change. So this slope will fall, or this slope will increase?
Fall.
Fall. So budget line becomes flatter.
Later.
Okay. If delta py is less than delta px, that is change in, so we need to look at a proportion. Okay. So this is, it means budget line becomes steeper. Okay. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Next, we said that this point is m upon py. When your m is increasing, so m upon py, this will increase. This means this might come here and this point will go over here. So there will be parallel. When your m is changing, there will be parallel shift. Parallel shift. Now, whether this shift is inward or outward, it will be inward when m falls. Outward when your income is increasing, there will be outward parallel shift. When your income is decreasing, parallel inward shift. This is clear?
Yes, sir.
Next is that, so this is case one when your budget line is changing. Second, budget line is shifting when both px and py changes. Okay. Now slope will increase or decrease depends upon what? Delta
Price.
x, delta px and delta py. Only px or py is changing. So in this case, no shift, only slope changes. Clear? Clear?
Yes, sir.
Anyone having any question? Sakshi?
Yes, sir. Clear.
तो आप लोगों ने ये सब पहले पढ़ा था इस तरीके से?
No, sir.
No,
इस तरह
sir.
से-
नेहा?
Yes, sir. I saw like YouTube videos, consumer theory, so little bit.
Okay. Yashika? Okay. So this is all about budget line. Okay. Now let's introduce the concept of equilibrium. Of consumer theory. So equilibrium of consumer theory depends upon two things. One is your indifference curve, and second is your budget line. Okay. So this is good X and this is good Y. Okay. So let's say this is your indifference curve. I see. And this is your budget line. Okay. So the point of equilibrium is where budget line is tangent to the this is point A, and equilibrium point is point where indifference curve is tangent to the budget line. Okay. Now let's understand what was the slope of indifference curve. What was the slope of indifference curve? MRS xy is equal to MUX upon MUY. This was the slope. And budget line slope was minus PX upon PY. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So equilibrium point is your MRS x comma y is equal to MUX upon MUY is equal to minus PX upon PY. And our MRS is also negative. So this is the condition for equilibrium point. Now see, what is happening is that at this point, your budget line is, just touching a single point on indifference curve. And why only a single point on the indifference curve will be your equilibrium? This can be explained using the principle of equimarginal principle, or the concept of equimarginal principle. Equimarginal principle. What is this Px upon Py? What is this Px upon Py?
Slope of budget line.
Slope of budget line. But then the ratio of Px and Py, what is the economic interpretation of this? This
Don't know.
Px upon Py gives you a, relative price, or this gives you a trade-off price. Okay. Similarly, this ratio, marginal utility of X divided by marginal utility of Y, this ratio gives us how much of good Y you want to give up to increase 1 unit of good X. Okay. So see, if we rearrange this thing, we have written that equilibrium is, mu upon X by mu upon Y is equal to Px upon Py. So we can rewrite MUX by PX is equal to MUY upon PY. We can write this. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Hmm. Now, what is the economic interpretation of this? The equilibrium point suggests that, whether you are consuming the good X or good Y, the last rupee that you are spending must give you the same utility. That is, the consumer must get the same utility. The same utility from the last rupee, by consuming either good X or good Y or good Y. Because see, if your marginal utility of good X is higher in this case than good Y, in this case, what you will do is that you will increase good X. You'll keep on increasing, but then there will be diminishing marginal return. So overall, you will come to good Y marginal utility. See, if your MUX is greater than MUY, in this case, what happens is that you will keep on increasing consumption of good X. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Because good X is giving you more utility. That's why you are consuming more of good X. And if as you keep on increasing good X, due to diminishing marginal returns or diminishing marginal utility, what happens is that MUX will keep on decreasing further. So it will come to a point where your MUX will be equal to MUY, not in the ratio of PX upon PY. So this principle is known as equimarginal principle. See, important point to understand over here is that we are introducing the concept of prices also. Okay, so this gives you not just the ratio of price or the utility, but the combination of both price and utility, marginal utility. Is it clear? This talks about the ratio of affordability. Ratio of affordability. This talks about the ratio of what? Changing utility. That's why we say that at equilibrium point, this must be the same. Otherwise, what happens? So let's try to understand what happens if there is a situation where we are saying that this is a situation. In this case, what happens is that you can afford this much. So can you consume at anywhere on this indifference curve? Because this budget line gives you how much of good X and Y you can afford. How much of good X and Y is affordable? Yes. So that's why we say that yes, we must consume on the budget line. Therefore, we must be having a indifference curve on the budget line. Now, next is that what happens if our budget line is something like this. This means we can consume at this point also, at this point also, because this budget line is crossing the indifference curve. Yes, no.
Yes, sir.
Now, if we draw indifference curve like this indifference curve is also on this budget line, therefore we can afford this point also.
Yes, sir.
But this budget line is on the higher indifference curve than the red line. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
This is on the higher indifference curve as compared to this. This means that at this point, you can consume more of good X and Y and still afford it. Therefore, we say that there will be a single point, a tangent point, and this tangent point is the equilibrium. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Now, let's say that we are at a disequilibrium. Disequilibrium means, let's say we know that equilibrium point is MUX upon MUY is equal to PX upon PY. Let's say that we are at a disequilibrium. Okay, such that let's say that MUX upon MUY is greater than PX upon PY. Okay, so this implies that MUX upon PX is greater than MUY upon PY. Okay, so in this case, we'll say that X consumption will increase such that, you know, X will keep on increasing such that the thing that we discussed here, you know, like if you will keep on increasing X such that eventually your MUX is marginal utility from each additional unit keeps on decreasing such that final point your MUX upon PX is equal to MUY upon PY. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So now can you tell me what happens when there is a change in income? What happens to the utility?
Utility changes.
So you'll reach to a higher utility point. Okay. See, now let's talk about, now that there are two important things to be discussed. One is change in income, and second is change in price. Let's say that this is the indifference curve graph, or this is good Y and this is good X. Let's say this is our indifference curve and this is our budget line. Okay, this is our PX upon PY and this is IC1. Let's say case PY decreases. So when PY is decreasing, in this case PX upon PY, this will increase or this will decrease?
Increase.
This will increase. Therefore, this means the slope will increase or slope will decrease. See, PY is decreasing.
Increase.
When PY is decreasing, what happens to M upon PY? Whether it will increase or it will decrease?
It will increase.
This means there will be outward shift of this point. So let's call it this point. Okay. This means this is the new. So this is the new slope, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. when there is a change in budget line, what happens now? Now this budget line is on the right hand side of the original budget line. This means that we can afford the goods on the higher indifference curve.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is IC1. Let's call it IC2. Okay. This means that earlier, if the our in our point of consumption was this 2 point, now we are consuming at these 2 points. So now what happens is that the increase from point, let's call it point A and let's call it point B, in changes from point A to point B, there are two different type of effects that we need to see. One is your income effect, and second is your substitution effect. Okay. Now suppose what happens when your PY keeps on decreasing. So your budget line will keep on shifting, let's say like this, right? Your budget line will keep on shifting like this. So eventually, our indifference curve will keep on changing like this. So if we draw a line combining all the equilibrium points, we might get something like this. And this line is known as price consumption curve. Okay. Now this effect, again, the income effect and substitution effect, we need to see for three different goods. One is neutral, second is neutral, or you can say not neutral, normal good. Neutral is something different. Inferior, and third is given. So let's assume that your good Y is a given good. Let's assume that good Y is a given good. So when your PY increases, what happens to the consumption of good Y?
Will
It
increase.
will increase.
Y will increase. And what happens to the consumption of good X? So this means good X is a normal good? Yes or no?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
So X, consumption of X will increase or it will decrease? It will decrease.
It will decrease.
Why do we increase the consumption of good Y when the price of good Y is increasing? Why we don't decrease the consumption of good Y when the price of good Y is increasing? Because given goods are sometimes necessary goods. Necessary goods. Let's take the example of, let's say, milk and rice. What is more important for consumption, rice or milk?
Rice.
So therefore, when the price of rice is increasing, let's say PR is increasing, what we actually do is that we decrease the consumption of milk and we increase the consumption of rice. Okay. That's why it is again necessary to understand is that given goods are also necessary goods, and that's why we cannot decrease the consumption of these necessary goods. So we decrease the consumption of other goods like milk in this example, or rather than milk, let's say ice cream. What will you decrease, ice cream consumption or rice consumption?
Ice cream.
Ice cream consumption. So even though ice cream is a normal good, we still decrease the consumption of rice. Ice cream. Okay. So if we want to draw an indifference curve, let's say this is your rice and this is your ice cream. So, and let's say this is a budget line. So let's let's call it, we have something like this. Now we are saying that our price of this is nothing but m upon px, and this is m upon py. Px is increasing, so there will be this point will shift towards the origin or outside the origin. So m upon
Toward origin.
will decrease. This means this will shift towards the origin. So let's call it this point. Okay, this is a new point. So our indifference curve is, something like this. So if you compare these two lines, okay, so this is your x1 and this is your y1, this is your y2, x2. So you see that your delta x is increasing and delta y is decreasing. Clear? When your px is increasing. So this is a case of given good.
Sir, will utility also change in this case?
What?
Will total utility also change?
Yes, of course, we are coming down to a new lower indifference curve.
Okay, sir. Got it.
We're coming down to a lower indifference curve, so utility will decrease. See, your M is constant and PX is increasing. So your affordability is increasing or decreasing?
Decreasing.
So utility will increase, decrease.
Decrease.
So total utility is decreasing. Okay. So tomorrow, what we are going to do is that we are going to discuss the, effect of price and income change. Effect of price and income change. Okay. See, similarly, if we take the example of, let's say, where y is, let's say, inferior good and x is normal good. Okay. And if this is the, let's say, budget line, this is our indifference curve. Let's say this is the indifference curve. When your M is changing, what happens to the budget line? It will shift outward. So there will be, let's say, parallel shift of the budget line. Let's say this is the parallel shift. And in the case of inferior good, when your income is changing, what happens to the consumption of good Y? Y will increase or decrease?
Decrease.
So it will decrease.
Decrease.
So what happens is that you can think of your indifference curve something like this. Okay. Okay. So there is a decrease and there is an increase. Delta X is increasing and delta Y is decreasing. Okay. Is it clear? So I will do.
Yes, sir.
I will share a PDF with all of these curves. Is it okay? I'll separately add a PDF with all of these things so that it's very easy to grasp. Maybe I'll add the PDF today itself with different type of indifference curve for different type of goods and all of these changes explained. Is it okay?
Okay.
Okay.